Personality NLP case study for Ashish. Ascendant, Hasta Virgo. Ashish has Hasta rising in Virgo, indicating a psyche that is deeply refined, practical, and precision-focused, both in how he perceives the world and presents himself within it. Hasta, ruled by the moon, carries themes of craftsmanship, control, and healing through the hands, while Virgo, ruled by Mercury, emphasizes analysis, service, improvement, and detail. Together, they form an ascendant that is calculated, helpful, meticulous, and deeply tuned to how things function, whether bodies, systems, or behaviors. Ashish likely comes across as composed and intentional, with a quiet but observant energy that's always taking in more than he lets on. From an NLP perspective, this configuration should suggest a kinesthetic and auditory digital processing style. Hasta gives a physical, embodied approach to understanding. Ashish likely needs to feel how something works, using feedback from the body or environment to guide choices. Virgo, through Mercury, contributes structured thinking, system building, and a love of process. He likely enjoys solving problems through logical breakdown and hands-on refinement. These elements combine to create a highly responsive, task-oriented communicator who values accuracy over performance. His motivation direction is likely a careful balance of away from and towards. Virgo tends to focus on what needs fixing or refining, away from, while Hasta contributes an urge to improve the present moment, towards. This duality gives Ashish a strong internal tension. He is driven to perfect what is flawed, but also to move towards skillfulness, clarity, and subtle mastery. Rather than chase visibility or glory, he works steadily to align his actions with purpose and process. Fulfillment comes not from flash, but from things being right. Ashish's frame of reference is strongly internal. Virgo ascendants often operate from inner benchmarks. He doesn't need external approval to know whether something works. He likely evaluates situations by how well they align with his mental model or embodied standard of excellence. He may seem quiet or even skeptical in new settings, but this is simply due to his tendency to assess first, act second. Once trust is established, however, he's consistent and diligent in both contribution and presence. His attention filter is self-oriented, particularly in new or high-responsibility environments. Hasta brings a subtle awareness of control, of how his behavior shapes outcomes. He likely values independence and prefers environments where his autonomy is respected. However, this doesn't make him aloof. Rather, he believes in getting things right before getting involved deeply. As a result, he may prefer observation before immersion, precision before presence. Ashish's chunking style is typically specific to general. He works from details upward, collecting data, examining patterns, and then extracting broader meaning or design. In both communication and problem solving, he may begin with specifics and slowly build to synthesis. This makes him a systems thinker with a precision filter, someone who can patiently work through the mechanics of a situation before stepping back to see the bigger picture. Altogether, Ashish's Virgo ascendant in Hasta gives him a master craftsman's mindset, grounded in logic, refined by intuition, and always seeking meaningful function and form. His NLP drives reveal a psyche that thrives on clarity, precision, autonomy, and emotional control. He learns by doing, speaks through refinement, and acts only when internal alignment and practical utility are both present. In all domains, he is most fulfilled when he's creating elegant solutions through intentional effort and understated excellence. Sun fourth house, Rahu in Mulas. Ashish's fourth house, the domain of emotional foundation, inner security, familial conditioning, and psychological grounding, contains Rahu in Mula, placed in Sagittarius. This is a bold, karmically charged placement that infuses the inner world with themes of deconstruction, root truth-seeking, and philosophical rebellion. The fourth house usually provides safety and comfort, but Rahu in Mula here disrupts that, suggesting that Ashish's path to inner stability comes not through peace, but through tearing down what is false and rebuilding on uncompromising personal truth. Mula, ruled by Ketu, is a nakshatra of uprooting. It strips away illusions, attachments, and inherited narratives to uncover what's real at the root. Rahu, the planet of obsession, amplification, and future-seeking, intensifies this process. Ashish's emotional security may not have come easily or traditionally. Instead, He's internally driven to question and challenge the frameworks he inherited, philosophical, cultural, or familial. From an NLP perspective, this creates a strong away-from-motivation direction in the emotional realm. He instinctively distances himself from environments or ideas that feel dogmatic, hypocritical, or shallow. His operational style in this house is distinctly options-based and abstract. Sagittarius and Rahu both crave expansion and possibility, especially in meaning-making. Ashish is unlikely to rely on inherited emotional norms. He builds his internal frameworks through experience, deep thought, and sometimes trial by fire. He may restructure his inner life multiple times across life stages, each time aligning more closely with his evolving philosophical core. He doesn't find peace by clinging to emotional comfort. He finds it by discovering what cannot be faked. His frame of reference here remains internal, but with a rebellious edge. While many may seek emotional validation from family or tribe, Ashish likely feels unseen or misaligned in early environments. This placement fosters emotional independence. He teaches himself what safety feels like, and often prefers solitude to conformity. He may resist external efforts to define his emotional life, choosing instead to build it from what he personally knows to be true. His work and activity preference in this domain leans towards solo or wide-view exploratory modes. The fourth house connects to foundational learning and routine emotional nourishment, but Rahu in Sagittarius disrupts routine. Ashish may feel at home when he is not at home, when he's learning something vast, diving into truth-seeking journeys, or peeling back emotional and philosophical layers. He likely avoids overly sentimental or emotionally stagnant environments, and instead seeks stimulation, honesty, and room to roam, emotionally, mentally, or even geographically. His time orientation in the fourth is somewhat through time, but with non-linear phases of transformation. Rahu and Mula may prompt sudden breaks from the past or periodic inner overhauls. He reflects deeply on formative events, but is not bound to them. He may oscillate between remembering and rejecting, only keeping what aligns with his ever-evolving sense of truth. The emotional past is important, but only as a resource for recalibration, not a destination. Overall, Rahu and Mula in the fourth house gives Ashish a deeply transformative emotional architecture, one that is dismantled and rebuilt according to inner truth, not inherited tradition. His NLP drives here suggest a person who processes emotion intellectually, learns through existential unraveling, and finds safety not in predictability, but in the fierce clarity of honest self-definition. Home for him is wherever his truth has space to breathe. Fifth house, Saturn in Dhanishta Capricorn. Ashish's fifth house, governing creativity, intelligent memory, emotional expression, romance, and the transmission of knowledge, contains Saturn in Dhanishta, placed in Capricorn, its own sign. This creates a powerful blend of emotional restraint, structural intelligence, and rhythmic mastery. The fifth is typically expressive and spontaneous, but Saturn here disciplines and refines that energy. Dhanishta, ruled by Mars, brings the gift of timing, legacy building, and structured sound or motion, making Ashish's creative intelligence measured, rhythmic, and purposeful, never frivolous or impulsive. From an NLP perspective, this placement points to procedural and auditory digital processing style. Ashish likely learns best through structured systems, repetition, and internally paced sequences. His mind may retain information through frameworks, rhythms, or pattern-based memory. He's not a surface-level thinker. He processes slowly, thoroughly, and often privately, extracting clarity through refined logic and internal timing. Creative ideas, insights, or emotions may be expressed only once they've been distilled. No excess, only essence. His motivation direction in the fifth house is strongly away from, at least on the surface. Saturn tends to restrain easy access to joy, creativity, or romantic spontaneity. Not to deny them, but to require depth and integrity before expression. Ashish may be skeptical of lightness unless it serves a meaningful function. In intellectual or creative spaces, he is motivated to remove clutter, falseness, or inefficiency, driven by a quiet need for elegant simplicity and enduring value. His frame of reference is highly internal here. Saturn gives Ashish self-containment in how he relates to emotional expression and personal intelligence. He's unlikely to seek praise or romantic validation. Instead, he builds confidence through effort, mastery, and solitude. In early life, this may have felt like repression or over-control, but over time, it matures into emotional precision and intellectual authority. He trusts his inner rhythm more than outer applause. Ashish's work and activity preference in this house is solo or controlled proximity. He likely prefers to create, think, or study alone, especially when refining complex ideas, building mental structures, or expressing subtle emotion through form, music, language, design, etc. If he works with others, it must be in a setting that respects silence, timing, and individual mastery. He may struggle in collaborative environments that lack order, or where emotional expression is messy or ungrounded. His time orientation in the 5th is strongly through time. Saturn in Capricorn is deeply chronological. Ashish likely tracks development, progress, and learning in long arcs. He may revisit old intellectual interests or emotional themes over years, gradually refining his understanding. Creativity for him is not about bursts of inspiration. It's about long-form development, where each insight builds on the last with quiet discipline. In sum, Saturn in Dhanishta in the 5th gives Ashish a mature, rhythmic, and structured creative mind, one that works in silence, expresses selectively, and builds legacy rather than fleeting impact. His NLP drives in this house reflect a person who thinks and creates in time, through form, and toward refined clarity. Whether in thought, romance, or artistic work, he does not aim to impress, he aims to perfect. 6th house, Moon in Purva Bhadrapada. Ashish's 6th house. Governing service, responsibility, health, daily rhythm, conflict navigation, and refinement through effort. Contains the Moon in Purva Bhadrapada, placed in Aquarius. This creates a complex emotional relationship with work, duty, and routine, one that blends emotional depth, visionary insight, and existential responsibility. The Moon in the 6th doesn't always find comfort. Rather, it feels its way through discomfort to adapt, heal, and master. In Aquarius, the Moon becomes more detached and observant, while Purva Bhadrapada, ruled by Jupiter, adds intensity, abstract fire, and moral weight. Ashish is likely someone who serves through principled emotional intelligence, even if that intelligence isn't always visibly expressed. From an NLP standpoint, this configuration suggests a kinesthetic and dissociative processing style. Ashish likely feels stress or misalignment somatically in his body and nervous system, especially in work or service environments. Yet with the Moon in Aquarius, there's often a delay between sensation and expression. He may withdraw, observe, or mentally process discomfort before choosing how to act. Purva Bhadrapada intensifies this. He doesn't just want to fix problems, he wants to understand the truth underneath them. He approaches tasks and conflicts with inner intensity, masked by quiet distance. His action style in the 6th house is generally reactive, especially in emotional or interpersonal work settings. The Moon responds to mood and rhythm, and in Aquarius, this response becomes cyclical and pattern-aware. Ashish may sense imbalance or injustice long before others do, but may not address it directly until he's internally processed what it means. His strength lies in emotional patience and timing. He knows how to endure discomfort when needed, and when he acts, it's with psychological depth. Ashish's work preference here is solo or structured proximity. The 6th house rules daily environments, and with the Moon in Aquarius, he likely needs autonomy within a system. Too much emotional intensity in workspaces may drain him. He does best when he has clear expectations, emotional space, and a higher ideal to orient toward. He is capable of service, but only in environments that respect internal order, moral vision, and private emotional pacing. His time orientation in this house is through time. He sees effort and healing as progressive processes. He likely tracks how small patterns lead to larger systemic effects, both in his body and in his work. Emotional or physical health may also be managed over time, with Ashish refining his habits and reactions across years rather than responding impulsively. His sense of timing is subtle, often intuitive, and based on energetic rhythms more than external deadlines. His primary interest motivation in this area is value and concept-driven. Purva Bhadrapada seeks truth, and Aquarius aims to serve the collective. Ashish is likely driven to correct, solve, or support, not just because a task exists, but because it matters. He may be drawn to work that serves a larger ideal, justice, healing, clarity, or reform, and is less motivated by praise or hierarchy. When his values align with his work, he becomes highly committed and quietly effective. Overall, the moon in Purva Bhadrapada in the 6th gives Ashish a work and service orientation that is emotionally attuned, vision-led, and inwardly disciplined. His NLP drives reflect someone who operates best when allowed to process deeply, act with meaning, and serve through emotionally contained, morally aware engagement. Whether supporting others, solving problems, or refining systems, he does so not from ego, but from a place of timed clarity, emotional integrity, and unseen resilience. 8th house, Mars in Ashwini. Ashish's 8th house, the realm of transformation, crisis navigation, intimacy, hidden power, and deep psychological integration, contains Mars in Ashwini, placed in Aries, where Mars is both in its own sign and in the nakshatra it rules. This is an exceptionally potent placement, giving him an instinctive and fearless relationship with change, depth, and emotional intensity. The 8th house is not easy terrain, but Mars in Ashwini meets it with speed, initiative, and sharp clarity. He doesn't avoid transformation. He charges into it, often initiating changes others resist. This placement marks him as someone who processes the unknown with courage, autonomy, and an almost surgical decisiveness. From an NLP perspective, this configuration supports a proactive and kinesthetic processing style. Ashish likely experiences tension or psychological friction in his body first, a visceral signal that tells him something hidden needs to move. Ashwini, ruled by Ketu, gives this process a spiritual edge. He doesn't just want to understand shadow material or emotional intensity, he wants to clear it fast. His inner world may go through cycles of confrontation, purge, and reset. He learns through direct contact with discomfort, often pushing himself and others toward healing by moving into what's typically avoided. His action style in the 8th is highly proactive. Mars in Aries reacts fast, sometimes faster than conscious thought. In the 8th house, this can show up as taking the lead in crises, speaking truth others avoid, or forcing emotional clarity in hidden dynamics. Ashish may be the one to name the problem no one's addressing, or to walk away from emotionally entangled situations without waiting for collective permission. His instinct in the face of psychological pressure is not to collapse, but to cut through. His frame of reference here is firmly internal. He does not look to others for permission to act in emotionally complex spaces. His intuition is fast, self-directed, and often rooted in a felt sense of what's true, not a verbal explanation. With Ashwini's Ketu-based influence, there's also a degree of karmic memory. He may have a natural understanding of emotional survival, power dynamics, or intimacy boundaries, even without being taught. He operates from inner signal, not external scripts. Ashish's work and activity preference in this house is typically solo or deep one-on-one. The 8th house governs behind-the-scenes work, inner alchemy, and shared resources, and Mars here prefers to manage those spaces independently or with clear, clean lines of trust. He may be drawn to work involving transformation, psychology research, crisis response, or healing, but only if he can maintain agency and speed. He doesn't do well in emotional entanglement or systems that drag out what could be directly handled. His time orientation is heavily in time. Ashwini is fast, Mars is instinctual, and the 8th house deals with live emotional material. Ashish likely responds to hidden triggers or deep changes as they arise, with a sense of now or never urgency. While this can sometimes make him appear reactive, it also makes him a natural emotional first responder, able to act under pressure, move into intensity, and extract clarity where others hesitate. Altogether, Mars and Ashwini in the 8th house gives Ashish a transformational engine that is fast, fearless, and clean-cut. His NLP drives here reflect someone who processes deeply but acts quickly, someone who enters emotional complexity not to dwell, but to clear and catalyze. He doesn't shy away from endings, secrets, or shadows. Instead, he brings precision, motion, and instinct will to the places most people fear. His presence in the 8th doesn't just endure change, it initiates it. 10th house. Mercury in Punarvasu, Venus, Sun, and Ketu in Ardra, Gemini. Ashish's 10th house, the sphere of career, public identity, long-term purpose, and external impact, is exceptionally potent, hosting 4 planets in Gemini, Mercury in Punarvasu, and Venus, the Sun, and Ketu in Ardra. This creates a professional orientation that is mentally driven, multidimensional, and karmically nuanced. Gemini's natural versatility and Mercury's rulership of the 10th cusp make communication, ideas, language, systems, and movement central to his public expression. He is not built for static roles. His career is meant to evolve, adapt, and intellectually stretch, often crossing disciplines or reinventing itself over time. Mercury in Punarvasu gives Ashish a mind that is ethical, cyclical, and regenerative. Punarvasu, ruled by Jupiter, adds philosophical structure and return-to-truth energy to his thinking. He likely processes career challenges through reflection, reframing, and intellectual healing. From an NLP lens, this supports an auditory, digital, and visual symbolic processing style. Ashish may structure ideas in themes, frameworks, or patterns, speaking and thinking in a way that brings people back to clarity. He likely excels at taking scattered concepts and restoring order, intellectually or organizationally. The Sun, Venus, and Ketu in Ardra add complexity. Ardra, ruled by Rahu, is the storm. It brings emotional intensity, mental disruption, and karmic unraveling. Ashish's identity, Sun, values, Venus, and past life residue, Ketu, all sit in this nakshatra, suggesting that his public path is deeply tied to emotional truth-telling, disruption of outdated systems, and a hunger to speak what others avoid. In the NLP frame, this constellation favors a dissociative and reactive processing style in public settings. He may appear detached or quiet, but when triggered or fully aligned, he can speak with cutting insight and transformative force. His motivation direction in career is towards, driven by intellectual integration, expressive freedom, and inner clarity. Punarvasu seeks to restore what's been broken. Ardra tears down illusions. Ashish is motivated to bring intelligent order out of emotional chaos, especially through speech, writing, or idea building. He may feel drawn to careers that involve systems thinking, reform, teaching, language, or healing through communication, and prefers work that addresses deeper issues, not surface polish. His action style is a layered blend of proactive and reactive. Mercury and the Sun give initiative. Ketu and Ardra delay until the internal signal is clear. He may alternate between strategic output and silent recalibration, working best when he honors this cycle. His expression is often strongest after periods of detachment or internal reworking. He doesn't just speak to be heard, but when he does, he carries truth, tension, and timing. Ashish's frame of reference in public life is predominantly internal. While Gemini can be social, Ketu and Ardra strip away any attachment to applause. He needs to respect his own message and method in order to stay committed. Recognition may come, but it's not his driver. Coherence and intellectual integrity are. He is unlikely to stay in environments that suppress expression or require emotional pretense. His work preference in the 10th house is ideally solo with functional proximity. He thrives when allowed to manage his own pace and intellectual focus, but can operate well in collaborative structures that respect autonomy. He may gravitate toward roles where he can write, design systems, teach, or communicate ideas with emotional depth and structural clarity, and avoid settings that are overly hierarchical, stagnant, or emotionally manipulative. In sum, Ashish's 10th house configuration in Gemini reveals a career path defined by intellectual mastery, emotional clarity, and karmic purification through expression. His NLP drives here suggest someone who thinks deeply, speaks selectively, and leads by restoring sense to chaos, not with ego, but with language sharpened by experience and aligned with truth. 12th house, Jupiter in Purva Falguni. Ashish's 12th house, the realm of solitude, unconscious processing, spiritual withdrawal, loss of ego, and behind-the-scenes intelligence, contains Jupiter in Purva Falguni placed in Leo. This is a deeply generous, internally illuminated, and karmically creative placement. The 12th house dissolves the boundary between self and spirit. Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, meaning, and higher understanding, placed here, suggests that Ashish has access to private philosophical insight, spiritual generosity, and internal expansion that may not always be visible on the surface. With Purva Falguni, ruled by Venus, this insight is expressed through themes of rest, renewal, creative pleasure, and elegant detachment. From an NLP perspective, this placement creates a visual symbolic and auditory digital processing style that operates in silence. Ashish may integrate knowledge through solitude, dreams, art, or reflective states. His most profound insights likely come when he is not actively looking for them. Jupiter here acts like a spiritual library in the unconscious. He knows things intuitively, symbolically, or mythically before he logically verbalizes them. Purva Falguni adds aesthetic and relational intelligence to this. He may dream or intuit meaning through metaphor, pattern, or archetype. His frame of reference in this house is absolutely internal. Jupiter here does not seek external teaching. It is the teacher, but hidden. Ashish may feel that his deepest beliefs or spiritual values are private, perhaps even sacred or untouchable. He likely does not impose his worldview, but lives in alignment with a quiet internal philosophy, one built from deep internal processing and spiritual reflection. He may appear relaxed or passive on the surface, but inwardly, he is tracking truth with moral depth and existential awareness. Ashish's motivation direction in the 12th is subtly towards, though not in a conventional sense. He is drawn towards spiritual alignment, internal peace, and aesthetic resonance, things that can't be measured in metrics but can be felt in stillness. He may seek isolation or symbolic experiences not as an escape, but as a form of replenishment. He moves toward the soul's refinement, even if that means walking away from worldly recognition. His action style in this house is reactive, dream-paced, and intuitive. He may not force results in spiritual or emotional processing. Instead, he lets meaning rise organically. Purva Falguni is about enjoying the moment and honoring the sacred space of regeneration, and Jupiter here supports long, slow arcs of internal evolution. His deepest shifts may happen offstage, through journaling, dreaming, resting, or creating beauty for no audience. His work preference here is clearly solo, especially in realms that require emotional healing, creative incubation, or metaphysical study. He likely processes best when undisturbed and aesthetically aligned. A beautiful, quiet space may activate profound intellectual or spiritual downloads. He may also enjoy teaching or guiding others from behind the scenes, in private settings, or via symbolic artistic mediums. Altogether, Jupiter and Purva Falguni in the 12th house gives Ashish a soft but spiritually potent interior world, one built around hidden wisdom, quiet generosity, and symbolic clarity. His NLP drives here suggest a psyche that heals, teaches, and expands in private, and who seeks not recognition, but resonance with a deeper rhythm of truth and beauty. He may say little, but when he speaks from this space, it carries moral weight, cosmic insight, and emotional grace. Overall, NLP drives for Ashish. Ashish's NLP profile reveals a mind and personality built around structure, discernment, timing, and internal mastery. His chart strongly emphasizes Virgo, Capricorn, Gemini, and Aries energies, a combination that drives him to process through precision, intellectual engagement, independent instinct, and deep emotional calibration. He approaches life like a systems thinker with a warrior's reflex and a philosopher's ethics, reflective in solitude, direct in action, and highly attuned to what is real and useful in any environment he steps into. His dominant processing styles include auditory digital, kinesthetic, and visual symbolic. Ashish's Virgo Ascendant, Mercury in Gemini 10th, and Saturn in Capricorn 5th support clear internal sequencing and verbal logic. He processes by refining ideas and building clean, functional frameworks. His Moon and Mars placements in Aquarius and Aries add kinesthetic intuition and instinctive physical awareness. He feels when something is off before he explains it. Meanwhile, placements like Jupiter in Leo, 12th, and Mercury in Punarvasu give him an innate ability to track symbolic meaning and deeper narrative structure. Ashish's motivation direction leans toward away from in early phases, shifting to towards as alignment increases. His Virgo, Capricorn, and Saturn placements push him to perfect, refine, and remove what doesn't meet inner standards, a classic away from frame. But his Mars in Ashwini, Jupiter in the 12th, and Mercury in the 10th suggests that once clarity is found, he moves toward vision, clarity, or elegant impact with full conviction. His growth unfolds in arcs, first clear, then commit, making him both strategic and clean in how he directs energy. His frame of reference is strongly internal. Across emotional, professional, and creative domains, Ashish trusts his own readings of truth, alignment, and readiness. Ketu's placement in the 10th and Saturn's control over the 5th make him naturally skeptical of flattery, hierarchy, or public approval. He acts not from external pressure, but from internal coherence. He learns from experience and reflection, not from authority, and prefers self-correction over outward praise. His chunking style blends specific to general in technical matters and general to specific in philosophical ones. In tangible problem solving, Ashish prefers to work from data upward, refining details until they cohere. But when working from values, meaning, or systems-level thinking, especially with Jupiter in the 12th and Mercury in Punarvasu, he sees the big pattern first, then customizes his application to the moment. This flexibility makes him well-suited to roles involving strategic design, transformation, or analytical creativity. His action style is a powerful mix of proactive, Mars, Mercury, and reactive, Moon. He initiates quickly when aligned, especially in crises or high-focus environments, but withdraws to process when things are emotionally or morally unclear. He responds best when he has control over timing, allowing his precision and instincts to collaborate. This rhythm means he works in waves: immersion, extraction, refinement, and return. Ashish's ideal work preferences span solo, structured proximity, and autonomous leadership. He thrives when given space to think, design, or act with clarity, especially in systems that respect autonomy, clean roles, and emotional regulation. He is less drawn to highly emotional or status-driven settings, and more aligned with environments that allow him to solve, heal, or build with minimal noise. His NLP system, in essence, reflects a man who leads through quiet exactness, principled intelligence, and a subtle but decisive command of mental and emotional space.